Some people attend weddings hoping to celebrate love. Benjamin Hartwell attended because his best friend from Harvard was getting married. Michael Kong, one of the most brilliant attorneys Benjamin had ever known, and his former classmate. The ceremony overlooked the Pacific Ocean. White roses danced in the California breeze. 500 of the country's most influential guests filled the chapel. Doctors, judges, business executives, politicians, attorneys. The wedding itself was flawless. But Benjamin barely remembered the ceremony, because before the bride ever walked down the aisle, he heard music. Not ordinary music. A violin. One single note floated through the chapel. Then another. Every conversation stopped. Every head slowly turned. Benjamin looked toward the front and saw her. Natalia stood beneath soft golden light. Her gold evening gown shimmered against polished marble. Her violin rested beneath her chin. Eyes closed. Every movement graceful. Every note filled with emotion. She wasn't performing. She was remembering someone. Benjamin couldn't explain why he felt that. He simply knew. Benjamin Hartwell wasn't the type of man who believed in love at first sight. He believed in contracts, negotiations, winning. At 32 years old, he had already become one of Wall Street's most feared investment attorneys. Harvard Law, top of his class. Partner before most lawyers earned senior associate. Money, power, prestige. He had all of it. Women noticed him everywhere he went. Tall, dark hair, blue eyes, perfect smile, perfect suits. Confidence bordering on arrogance. Relationships? Those were distractions. His career always came first. Until a violinist he'd never met made him forget the wedding entirely. Benjamin watched her throughout the ceremony. She never sought attention, never looked around the room. She simply played. When the bride reached the altar, Natalia quietly lowered her violin. Applause erupted for the couple, but Benjamin found himself applauding someone else. Hours later, the reception transformed into a sea of crystal chandeliers, white roses, and laughter. Over 500 guests filled the ballroom. Benjamin stood near one of the balconies holding a glass. His eyes searched only for one person. Eventually, he found her. Natalia no longer held her violin. Instead, she carried a single glass of champagne. She smiled politely as guests approached one after another. Your performance was incredible. We'd love to hire you. Here's my card. Our foundation hosts galas every year. She thanked every person with the same gentle smile. Never overly excited. Never impressed. Never boastful. Benjamin had spent his entire career reading people. It was what great trial lawyers did. They noticed the things everyone else missed. And as he watched Natalia, he noticed something. Her smile never reached her eyes. There was sadness there. Not depression. Not bitterness. Grief. The kind that settled quietly inside someone for years. He couldn't explain why he knew. He simply did. Natalia looked toward the dance floor. Everyone else laughed, danced, celebrated. For just 1 second, her expression disappeared. She looked lonely. Then someone complimented her again. She smiled once more, like she'd practiced it. Benjamin felt something tighten inside his chest. He considered introducing himself several times. Instead, he watched another guest ask for her business card. Another compliment. Another handshake. Another smile. Then she disappeared into the crowd. Benjamin never spoke to her. But as his flight lifted off for New York the following morning, he looked out the airplane window, thinking about only one person. A violinist, whose name he had finally learned. Natalia. Back in Manhattan, life returned to normal. Court appearances, corporate mergers, investment disputes, 17-hour workdays. Benjamin usually forgot people quickly. Except, he couldn't forget Natalia. Meanwhile, Natalia returned to the life she'd carefully built. By 29, she had become one of the violinists for the prestigious New York Philharmonic. She performed before sold-out audiences, private galas, elite weddings, charity events. Everywhere she played, people stood in awe. Yet every evening, she returned to an apartment that felt painfully quiet, because she still wore another man's wedding ring. Not because she was married, because she was widowed. She had lost Callum, the love of her life, years earlier. Most people believed grief faded with time. They were wrong. It simply learned to whisper instead of scream. She still spoke to him every night, still celebrated his birthday, still visited places they'd loved, still poured 2 glasses of Bordeaux before remembering she only needed one. Her family never pressured her to move on. Her father had seen enough pain to understand. Instead, every night, he prayed, "Lord, when the time is right, send my daughter someone gentle, someone patient, someone who will never try to replace Callum, only love her while honoring him." And it was that exact prayer that changed everything. Nearly 2 months later, Benjamin purchased 6 VIP tickets to the New York Philharmonic. His business partners assumed he wanted to impress potential investors. Only Benjamin knew the real reason. Natalia. After the performance, VIP guests were invited backstage. Benjamin rehearsed his introduction dozens of times. Simple, confident, respectful, nothing more. Eventually, she entered the reception, still elegant, still graceful, still carrying that quiet sadness. Benjamin approached. "Excuse me." She turned. "Your performance tonight was incredible." She smiled warmly. "Thank you. I'm Benjamin. I'm Natalia." For several minutes, they talked about music, the orchestra, New York. Nothing personal, nothing flirtatious. Benjamin noticed something unusual. She wasn't impressed by him. Most women recognized his confidence immediately. Natalia didn't seem to care what he did, who he knew, or how expensive his watch was. Then, his eyes drifted downward, to her left hand. His heart stopped. A diamond wedding ring. His stomach dropped. How had he missed it before? Every possibility disappeared in an instant. She's married. Of course she is. Benjamin forced one final smile. It was wonderful meeting you. You too. He walked away. For the first time in years, Benjamin Hartwell felt defeated. Benjamin barely remembered driving home. The image of that diamond ring replayed over and over in his mind. He laughed quietly to himself. Congratulations, Ben. You finally meet someone who actually interests you, and she's married. He loosened his tie as he stepped into his Manhattan penthouse. Normally, he'd pour himself 18-year scotch before opening his laptop to finish another merger agreement. Tonight, the contracts remained untouched. Instead, he typed 3 words into Google. Natalia Grace Brooks. Immediately, hundreds of photographs appeared. Concerts, magazine interviews, fundraisers, the New York Philharmonic. Benjamin smiled. "So that's where you've been hiding." He clicked on her Instagram. Beautiful photographs, concert halls, violins, children she taught during community outreach, hospitals, charity performances, flowers left anonymously after concerts. But something was missing. There wasn't a single photograph of a husband. Not one anniversary. No wedding photos. No vacations together. Nothing. He frowned. Maybe he's private. He opened Facebook. Again, nothing. LinkedIn. Nothing. TikTok. Nothing. Benjamin leaned back. It didn't make sense. Someone wore a wedding ring every single day, yet there wasn't a trace of the man behind it. His curiosity became a concern. Then, one photograph caught his eye. It wasn't glamorous. No orchestra. No evening gown. No stage lights. Just 2 little children, sitting inside a kindergarten sandbox. A little black girl, a little blonde boy, both covered in sand, laughing. The caption underneath read, "Dear Callum, I miss you every single day. I know you're in heaven watching over me. Love always. Your wife, Nat." Benjamin stopped breathing. He read it again. Then again. His throat tightened. His eyes slowly drifted toward the date. 5 years ago. He whispered. Heaven. His hands became still. He finally understood. She wasn't married. She was widowed. Everything suddenly made sense. The sadness. The quiet smile. The loneliness. The wedding ring. Benjamin slowly leaned back in his chair. For the first time, he wasn't thinking about dating her. He wasn't thinking about asking her out. He wasn't thinking about winning. He simply sat there, heartbroken, for someone he'd only met once. Benjamin had spent years representing billion-dollar corporations. He'd watched CEOs cry after losing fortunes. Investors panic during crashes. Families destroy one another over inheritances. He thought he'd seen pain. He hadn't. Not until he imagined. A young woman still writing letters. To the man she'd buried. He clicked through more photographs. There was Callum. Military dress uniform. Smiling. Another photo. Them eating pizza on a New York sidewalk. Each picture felt alive. Benjamin couldn't explain it. But Callum looked good, kind. The kind of man who instinctively made strangers feel safe. Benjamin quietly whispered, I wish I'd met you. Hours passed. Outside. Rain gently tapped against the windows. Benjamin looked toward the skyline. His own apartment suddenly felt enormous. Empty. His expensive furniture. His awards. His degrees. His luxury watches. None of them mattered tonight. For the first time, his success felt strangely small. Weeks passed. Benjamin never searched for Natalia again. He respected her boundaries. Then, one Friday afternoon, his phone buzzed. A business associate had reposted an Instagram announcement. Benjamin froze. Natalia. She would be performing at an exclusive Manhattan social club, the Jade. Membership by invitation only. One of New York's most elite private houses. Judges. Diplomats. Wall Street executives. Professional athletes. Movie stars. If you weren't invited, you simply didn't enter. Benjamin wasn't a member. But he knew dozens who were. Within 20 minutes. He was sitting across from one of his clients. I need a favor. The older man laughed. You've never asked me for one before. I need a guest pass. The Jade. Benjamin nodded. His client smirked. Planning on joining? Benjamin hesitated. Maybe. The older attorney smiled knowingly. I've never seen you nervous before. Benjamin looked away. I'm not. His client laughed. That's exactly what nervous people say. The Jade looked more like a European palace than a social club. Crystal chandeliers. Live jazz. Marble floors. Private wine cellars. Quiet conversations between people who controlled enormous portions of the world's economy. Natalia stood near the grand piano, violin in hand. Tonight, she wasn't performing for applause. She was creating atmosphere. Elegant. Sophisticated. Almost ethereal. Benjamin couldn't take his eyes off her. When the evening concluded, guests slowly dispersed. Natalia carefully placed her violin into its case. She turned, and nearly bumped into Benjamin. Recognition immediately crossed her face. She smiled. Oh, helloed Benjamin. He couldn't help smiling. You remember me? She laughed softly. I'm good with names. That laugh was different. Lighter. For just a second, the sadness disappeared. Benjamin found himself smiling wider than he had in years. So? She asked. You remember? Benjamin shook his head. Not yet. Then, without thinking, he said exactly the wrong thing. I'm actually here because of you. Silence. Natalia's expression changed immediately. Her smile disappeared. She stared at him. Excuse me? Benjamin realized his mistake. Too late. Her face hardened. I think that's my cue to leave. She picked up her violin. Have a wonderful evening. She walked past him. Benjamin closed his eyes. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. He turned quickly. Natalia, Wait. She stopped. Slowly, without looking back. Benjamin took one careful breath. That came out completely wrong. He continued. She turned. My friends call me Ben. Her expression softened. Just enough. What do you do? I'm an attorney. She raised one eyebrow. Ah. So that's where the arrogance comes from. Benjamin blinked. Then, unexpectedly, laughed. You know, you're probably right. That surprised her. He sighed. I spend every day negotiating with people trying to destroy each other. Sometimes, I forget how to sound like a normal human being. For several seconds, Natalia simply looked at him. Then, she smiled. A real smile. Well, I'm glad you know that. Benjamin smiled back. So am I. Benjamin decided honesty was safer. I don't like playing games. I'd love to take you to lunch. Or dinner. As friends. Natalia answered immediately. No. No hesitation. No uncertainty. Just. No. Benjamin stared. No. She nodded. No. Benjamin had spent most of his adult life hearing one word. Yes. Yes to dinner. Yes to drinks. Yes to another date. No. Was unfamiliar. Almost foreign. He blinked twice. Trying to process it. Natalia almost laughed. She could practically see the confusion on his face. Benjamin finally recovered. Well, I'll leave my card anyway, in case you ever change your mind. She smiled politely. I won't. Benjamin couldn't help laughing. Fair enough. He handed her his card anyway. She accepted it only because refusing felt unnecessarily rude. Good night, Natalia. Good night, Ben. He walked away. Natalia looked down at the business card. Benjamin Hartwell. Senior investment attorney. One of the most prestigious firms on Wall Street. She shook her head. Definitely full of himself. She slipped the card into her handbag. Mostly because she didn't feel like finding a trash can. She had absolutely no intention of calling him. That night, Manhattan never really slept. Traffic still hummed beneath Natalia's apartment. Sirens echoed somewhere in the distance. Yet the moment she unlocked her front door, silence welcomed her home. She slipped off her heels and coat, carefully placed her violin case beside the piano, then reached for a familiar bottle resting above the wine rack. Bordeaux, the same vineyard, the same vintage, the same wine. She and Callum had shared on their very first date. She smiled sadly. Still your favorite. She poured herself a single glass. Without thinking, she reached for another. Halfway through pouring, she froze. A tiny smile crossed her lips. Old habits. She emptied the second glass back into the bottle. Grief is strange. It doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes, it lives quietly inside routine. Or pouring 2 glasses of wine. Long after someone is gone. Natalia carried her glass into the living room. She smiled. Hey, Cal. She whispered. I know. It's been a while since we've talked. You would have laughed today. There was this ridiculously expensive social club. The kind of place where everyone walks around pretending they're more important than everyone else. She rolled her eyes dramatically. I swear. If arrogance had a zip code, it would be Manhattan. She chuckled softly. I played. They clapped. They drank overpriced champagne. The usual. She took another sip of wine. Then smiled. Oh. There was one interesting thing. There was this attorney. His name's Ben. She laughed. You would have liked making fun of him. She looked toward Callum's picture. He has that Wall Street confidence. The kind that walks into a room before he does. I don't know. He gives me Playboy vibes. He asked me out. I told him no. Immediately. No hesitation. She looked at the photograph again. I can't do that, Cal. I can't. Her voice cracked. I can't replace you. I don't want to. I don't even know who I'd be without being your wife. Tears rolled silently down her cheeks. I miss you. So much. She leaned her head back against the couch. The wine slowly warmed her body. Within minutes, she drifted into sleep. Darkness. Then, light. Natalia slowly opened her eyes. She was standing somewhere unfamiliar. A quiet street. Brick sidewalks. Flower boxes beneath cafe windows. The air smelled like fresh bread and coffee. Everything felt peaceful. Not like a dream. Real. Almost too real. Across the street sat a tiny cafe. Outdoor tables. White umbrellas. People laughing softly. Then, she saw him. Callum. He looked exactly as she remembered. Perfectly pressed military dress uniform. The smile that had always made her feel safe. Healthy. Whole. Alive. Her heart exploded. Callum. She tried running. Her feet wouldn't move. She tried screaming again. Nothing. No sound escaped. Then, she noticed someone else sitting across from him. Benjamin, still wearing one of his immaculate white dress shirts. Suit jacket draped neatly over the chair. The two men were talking. Calmly. Comfortably. Almost like old friends. Natalia couldn't hear a single word. She watched them smile. Laugh. Then, Callum stood. Benjamin stood too. The two men looked directly at one another. Then, they shook hands. Not casually. Purposefully. Like two men making a promise. Callum placed his left hand gently on Benjamin's shoulder. Smiled. Then Callum looked toward Natalia. His expression held peace. Relief. Almost. Approval. Everything became blindingly white. Natalia gasped awake. She bolted upright. Breathing heavily. Her heart pounded against her chest. The apartment was dark. Only the digital clock glowed. 3:07 a.m. She sat completely still, trying to understand. Why Ben? She whispered. Why him? She walked to the kitchen, poured herself water, looked out over Manhattan. The dream refused to leave her mind. She had dreamed of Callum before, many times, but never with someone else. Especially not someone she'd barely met. Eventually, she convinced herself. It was just a dream. Nothing more. She returned to bed. Sleep came slowly. Across town. Benjamin Hartwell was dreaming too. He found himself sitting at the exact same cafe. Morning sunlight filtered through the trees. Fresh coffee rested between his hands. Across from him sat a man in military dress blues. Blonde hair. Bright blue eyes. Confident posture. Benjamin didn't know his name. But somehow, he felt he already did. The man smiled warmly. Thank you. Benjamin frowned. For what? The soldier looked toward the empty chair beside them. For noticing her. Benjamin didn't understand. The soldier continued. She smiles. So nobody notices how much she's hurting. Benjamin looked confused. I don't even know her. The soldier laughed softly. You will. Benjamin leaned forward. Who are you? The soldier stood and extended his hand. My name's Callum. Benjamin stood and shook it. The grip was firm. Steady. Trustworthy. Like the handshake of someone who had already decided something important. Callum smiled. I have to go now. Wait. Benjamin said. I don't understand. Callum simply looked toward the empty chair. Take care of Nat. Benjamin blinked. Nat. Callum nodded. Don't try to replace me. No one can. But don't let her spend the rest of her life alone. Benjamin opened his mouth. And, before another word could be spoken, everything disappeared. Benjamin jolted awake. His breathing ragged. His sheets soaked with sweat. The clock read. 3:08 a.m. 1 minute after Natalia had awakened. Though neither of them knew it. Benjamin didn't return to sleep. Instead, he sat by the windows overlooking Manhattan. The sunrise slowly painted the skyline gold. Normally, his mornings began with financial news. Emails. Conference calls. Markets. Today, none of it mattered. He couldn't stop thinking about the dream. He had never believed in anything supernatural. Dreams were simply dreams. His logical mind searched desperately for explanations. Subconscious thoughts. Coincidence. Psychology. Anything. Yet, something about that handshake, and that one simple sentence, "Take care of Nat," felt impossible to ignore. Ben and Natalia tried to convince themselves that it was just a dream. Whenever life became too heavy, Natalia disappeared into Central Park. Not to escape people. To remember who she was before grief. She loved the trees. The birds. The breeze moving through the leaves. Nature had never asked anything from her. It simply welcomed her. That Saturday morning, she carried only her violin. She smiled, closed her eyes, lifted her violin beneath her chin, and began to play. She wasn't playing for applause. She wasn't playing for tips. She wasn't even playing for people. She played for the wind, for the birds, for the trees, for the little girl who had once believed love lasted forever. And somewhere, she hoped, Callum could still hear her. The melody floated through the park. It wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It invited people closer. Joggers slowed. Children stopped running. Dog walkers quietly stood still. One elderly man removed his hat. A young mother wiped tears from her face. Nobody spoke. They simply listened. Nearly half a mile away, Benjamin was jogging. Exercise had become his escape. Headphones rested around his neck, not over his ears. He preferred hearing the city, traffic, birds, life. Then, he heard it. A violin, soft at first, barely noticeable, but something about the tone made him stop running. He knew that sound. Not the song, the person, Natalia. Without thinking, he changed direction, following the music, then saw her, barefoot, standing in the grass. Morning sunlight wrapped around her like gold. Her eyes remained closed. Every note carried emotion too deep for words. Benjamin felt his chest tighten. He forgot he had been running, forgot the sweat pouring down his face, forgot everyone around him. There was only the music. Then, without warning, a single tear rolled down his cheek. Benjamin didn't even notice. Natalia drew the bow across the strings one final time. The final note lingered, floating across the field. Then, silence. She slowly opened her eyes. Only then did she realize. Hundreds of people surrounded her. Some smiled. Some cried openly. Others simply stood with hands over their hearts. No one moved. Natalia smiled shyly. She bowed once, gathered her violin, and looked up. There, standing near the back, was Benjamin, still wearing running clothes. Hair damp with sweat, face flushed, eyes still red. She blinked. Again? "Hi." Natalia smiled. "Hi." He laughed softly. "That was... I don't actually have words." She chuckled. "Thank you." There was an awkward silence. Benjamin rubbed the back of his neck. "We seem to keep running into each other." She smiled. "I was just thinking the same thing." He pointed toward the path. "I promise. This one wasn't planned. I heard your violin while I was jogging." She looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "I believe you." Benjamin searched desperately for something intelligent to say. Nothing came. Finally, he simply asked, "How are you?" Natalia looked surprised. Not because of the question, because of the way he asked it. There wasn't curiosity. There wasn't politeness. There wasn't flirting. There was concern. Real concern. For just 1 second, she almost answered honestly, "I'm lonely. I miss my husband every single day." Instead, she smiled. "I'm doing well. Thank you." Then she lifted her violin case. "I should probably get going. It was nice seeing you again." She turned, beginning to walk away. Benjamin watched her leave. Something inside him refused. Not because he wanted to date her, because he felt, if he let her leave now, he might never see her again. Without thinking, he reached forward, very gently. His fingertips brushed her hand. He stopped himself. Too late. Nat. Everything froze. Natalia slowly turned around. Her eyes widened. What? Did you call me? Benjamin immediately released her hand. I'm sorry. It came out. She stared at him. No anger. Only shock. My husband was the only person who ever called me Nat. Silence. Benjamin's heartbeat thundered inside his chest. He had never heard that nickname before. Not once. Not from anyone. Not even online. Yet somehow, it had come out as naturally as breathing. Neither of them spoke. Neither of them understood. The breeze gently stirred the trees around them. For the first time, Natalia really looked into Benjamin's eyes. Gone was the polished Wall Street attorney. Gone was the confident man she'd met at the Jade. Standing before her was someone unexpectedly gentle. Someone who looked almost as confused as she felt. If you're still here, you're invested in their story, just as I am. Next week, in the unforgettable finale, will Natalia finally find the courage to love again? Can Benjamin honor Callum's memory? Is this the man Natalia's father prayed for? You won't want to miss the emotional conclusion to this story. If today's episode touched your heart, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss next week's finale. Until then, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and never lose hope. Sometimes, love finds us in the most unexpected ways. I'll see you next week.